The New York Times has released some information about WoW's past, some cool little tidbits here that we'll get into in a bit. Ian Hazzikostas did some interesting interviews where he revealed his thoughts on the current state of hero talents, Mythic Plus, and so much more, and a few other pieces of news that we'll get into here. Welcome in, boys and girls. Buckle up. It's going to be a big dick one. Here we go. The New York Times 20th Anniversary Warcraft Edition. They released an entire article just based around WoW and the history that is WoW. We've been playing a pretty important game over the last 20 years, guys. It shaped society in quite an interesting way. Some highlights from the article. WoW was a social network before there was ever social media. This is totally true. I agree. I learned how to type because I learned how to talk to people on WoW. That's right. Politicians have used WoW to connect with younger, disaffected voters. Not sure how that works. The problem is, if the patch is bad, people will get out and vote. If it's a good patch, you're probably not a good idea to go after WoW players to go out and vote because they'd have to touch grass and they don't like to do that. There are high-minded academia who've studied art, basically doing art contests, things like that. The subscription service, proof that it could pay off, was done through WoW. South Park released an episode that won an Emmy based on World of Warcraft. One of my favorites, Make Love Not Warcraft. A fantastic episode that still stands up in today's time. Mom bathroom is all I'm going to say. WoW said orcs could be heroes. That's right. WoW changed the dynamic of orcs and humans by saying, oh, orcs could actually be the good guys at some point. The Me Boom Leroy Jenkins meme that took the world by storm. One of the most popular memes until this day. The Leroy Jenkins meme. That's right. He'll be back soon. Fuck you, Tundra. Celebrities who like, WoW in general. Jamie Lee Curtis, David Haber, Christian and Arum, Henry Cavill, and many, many more I know that aren't on here. In fact, do love WoW and play WoW. Players have opened their wallets for WoW, going to the theaters, charity pets, extravagant mounts, things like that. One of the lesser known points here. A few other interesting points, of course, and then WoW harnessed the power of nostalgia, bringing back WoW Classic, changing up the game with a fresh spin, and then starting it all over again. That's right, the first game to be out so long that it re-released the original game. Not the first, actually. Probably RuneScape might have been the first one to do something like a classic format, but World of Warcraft did it, and it continues to do it. Moving on. The Blazecycle, that's right, the fiery crotch rocket that is the Mountain Dew Blazecycle is coming back in stock. They have updated their website. Remember yesterday I reported on the fact that it was out of stock, which was weird because nobody knew that there was a stock limit on this thing. Well, it's been updated to now say more codes dropping soon. The Warcraft Hateforge Blazecycle will be returning to stock, so if you were in fact worried about it, that you drank all that Mountain Dew and now your piss is neon green for no reason, well, fear not. You will be able to use the codes to get yourself the fiery crotch rocket if you so desire. Moving on, Dragon Soul is now easier. Are you somebody who's been farming Dragon Soul? If you are, it should be a bit easier. One of the lesser known things about 11.0.5 was the fact that they went back and redid some raids, tuned some things down to make it easier for solo people to go back and rerun the content over and over. So for Dragon Soul here, we see that All Tracks Trash and Warmaster, Blackhorn, and the Spine of Deathwings fights have all been changed to be a bit easier. This should make it much, much better for people to solo run for that Experiment 12B mount and the Lifebinder Handmaiden mount as well. Two cool mounts that I actually should probably... The Experiment 12B is actually a pretty cool one. Go back and get that if you want. It should be a little bit easier to do than it was in the past. And now, on to the interviews with Ian. Some interesting stuff that Ian has been dropping about the coming patch, the expansions, and everything else have been coming out in these interviews. The Comeback Kids, we've watched some of their videos before. They got to do an interview with Ian Hazzikostas, and here are some of the summary points. With Delves, they're super happy with where they are. They believe, they gave people a chance who was solo the game to get Hero Track gear, which is what they really wanted to do. They are concerned about giving rewards beyond Hero Track because they've noticed if you give something in a Delve that's equivalent to something in Mythic Plus, well, people are going to go do the Delve because that's just easier content overall. So they've decided to kind of hold back on, making gear a little bit better from Delves. They're more worried about, making basically Mythic Plus completely, useless. So they're going to hold back on Hero Track. It should still only stay there. It will not go past that. Bran will have a tank spec in Season 2. We talked about this yesterday. Great for healers out there who've been trying to run Delves. There are a lot of design challenges between swapping champions, so they're going to keep Bran as the champion, but they did say there will be a new one running Delves with us in Midnight, so that's interesting. We'll have to see who that's going to be. And then there will be a new Delver's journey in Season 2. That's right, so new Delves and things to do in Season 2 with relation to Delves, so they'll continue to be relevant. Drive is the new mount that we're going to be getting in the next patch, I should say, 11.1. the hot rod, the customizable one, the one that's supposed to be infinitely faster than any current ground mounts we have. It's basically dynamic ground mounts. You're going to be able to, customize it, change how it slides around, drives, and everything else, acceleration and things. He did say you're going to be able to potentially add toys like companions and things into your car as well. And there will be courses similar to skywriting. So we talked about this being kind of like what skywriting brought to the game. Well, yep, we're gonna give us courses. We are gonna Mario Karting our way through the Undermined Zone, which is gonna be pretty cool. I'm excited for that. Operation Floodgate is not a mega dungeon, just a regular dungeon. Will be part of the Mythic Plus rotation. I'm happy to see that. Yeah, it'll be fun indeed, Konisi. I agree. Mythic Plus. Now, this is the interesting thing. This has been the problem, the controversial issue between Delves and Mythic Plus, whereas Delves basically drop gear up to what a 7 Mythic Plus would drop. So nobody wants to do a Delve or a Mythic Plus that's lower than a 7. The issue is a Mythic Plus at level 7 is not good entry content for somebody who hasn't been doing Mythic Plus. So Ian hinted at the fact that they may start rewarding you more for the lower end Mythic Plus content. That's right, plus 2s, 3s, 4s, 5, all the way up to 7 could start to drop better gear than it currently drops, which it should, considering Delves are going to drop equivalent gear in a much easier process. So I think, yeah, upping the rewards a little bit on the front end. The back end rewards are good. Everyone still wants to do them, but the front end rewards, not so good. Maybe they'll start to shift more into Mythic rating level gear. I mean, that already is the case with really high-end Delves. Maybe they shift it down a bit, or really high-end Mythic Plus. Maybe they shift it down a bit so you can start to get heroic gear much easier and much lower level Mythic Plus dungeons. We'll have to wait and see how that all pans out. They said they've heard the feedback and feel like it's a brick wall where you don't want to do the content that isn't going to give you relevant rewards. That's right, but you're not experienced enough to succeed in that content that will. And that's the issue right now. That's the issue kind of that Delves have created. Give me Mythic Plus, Mythic Track, Mythic Plus gear. Why not? I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that, and I think it's a good way for people who don't have the time to raid to be able to get the Mythic gear, of course. And then if you want the Mythic gear to always have that bit more, that pizzazz to show off that you, in fact, did the most difficult content in the game, Mythic rating, you can always add those little appearances, right? Like we got before, I forgot what it was, added extra lightning back in Dragonflight. There's always those Mythic track appearances that you can get just from Mythic rating that would signify, like, hey, I'm a big dick boy. I'm the one doing the hard shit. Yeah, not just item level based. And then crests. As I've said before, people in chat have bitched me out for not knowing which crest does what. And I've said before, the names are complicated as hell. I don't need a different naming scheme every time we get a new expansion. So just leave crests at like Mythic Track crests, Heroic Track crests, and then just limit them to seasons. So make it a Season 2 Heroic Track crest. When Season 3 starts, we can't use it anymore. That's simple. Just do it that way. They acknowledge the crest naming scheme is not intuitive. It's very complicated. And I don't need, when next expansion, I said before, when we go into the Void, I don't need a crest that's called, Xaloteth's Taint crest, and then Xaloteth's Toe crest, and then Xaloteth's Nip Ring crest. Whatever it is, we can just stick to, now that I say those names, I might actually want them. So I'm gonna take that back. Yeah, the big PP, medium PP, small PP, Sam's PP. Hey, I don't like that one. Yeah. Anyways, the cresting system needs to be better named. We'll get into that, and hopefully they'll figure out how to name it in a more intuitive way so it's not too complicated, and we don't need a spreadsheet to learn the new crest names every single season. Moving on to this interview, this final one that Ian did with Windows Central. We went through some of these already, but I did want to touch on some interesting stuff that he said about, what was it? It was basically hero talents, and the racial abilities. Let's see here. The hero talent conundrum and racial bonuses. Here it is. Blizzard already announced that there are several buffs to racials, though the game director noted that they wanted to keep racial power levels low, right? They don't want that to be the reason you pick a race. So on racials, he said, I think we are taking more passes at increasing the power, in particularly to underpowered races, such as the Draenei Light of the Naru, for example. Things that just don't feel worth even clicking in the current meta. At the same time, we want to keep racial power levels low. Just above pure flavor is the goal. The race you play should be an expression of your identity and preference in regard, then I think a meaningful to some mechanical flavor associated with different races based on their heritage or physical quirks. We don't want to be in a place where players feel forced to pick specific races. And I've said this before, don't pick a race that you don't like as aesthetic. You don't like what it looks like. You got to look at that shit every day. Okay, pick the one that you like the aesthetic of the most. The racials, they'll come and go. They do all right. They're part of a rotation. Maybe they'll give you a 0.01% boost in an area. But don't be so hard on yourself. Reading is hard. Oh my god. Yeah, it's hard when it's live. Imagine picking a Tauren. Come on, Tauren are great, actually. We actually found out High Mountain Tauren as tanks. Oh my god, their new racial abilities are unbelievable. Hero talent conundrum. Let's get into this because Ian also spoke on hero talents. The situation you described is a bit challenging, and the situation he's talking about is when people got to swap between talents to basically go either AoE or single target spec. Regarding picking specific trees for specific situations like AoE and single target, on the one hand, some players enjoy changing their loadouts to solve specific problems. Otherwise, others might dislike this, though, because they feel like the tree is an expression of their preference or aesthetic identity. This is what I think is the coolest, and this is what I want to do everywhere. That's what he's basically saying that people feel. That is true for hero talents and maybe even specs as a whole. We try to strike a balance between the strengths and weaknesses. That is why the hero talents and talents in general are heavily flexible. Moving from single target to something more AoE oriented for dungeons and then more utility focused for PvP. I think that's the direction class design will likely continue in. So if you're somebody who doesn't like, switching talents, you're not going to like what you just read here, because he basically said that talents will continue to be, flexible, which is good, and that you can change talents based on whatever you're feeling or whatever content you're going to do. But there will always be those meta specs for whether it's AoE, maybe doing Mythic Plus, or single target when you're raiding, or PvP when you're PvPing. That's just going to be how it is. And honestly, I don't really see a way they can balance it more than that. You just hope that it's balanced enough that every spec and every class basically has a spec that's always viable, always good in some way. You hate to see where there's a class that basically is in the shitter and for an entire expansion. They seem to be doing a little better with balancing. I always said hero talents were going to make balancing that much harder, and that's why I was kind of skeptical on all of them. But for now, I think most classes are in a decent space. They're trying to balance the meta out. We'll see if they continue to do that. I know there's classes out there that are shit right now, but everyone gets their turn in the sun eventually. Hopefully we see more race-agnostic specs, too. That would be kind of cool. Everything should be viable except Blood DK because Sam plays that. Yep, I guess so, Boishi. I guess so. That is all in terms of news.